thank you so much for being here and to leave the beach just to see me. My God, DeRico, you are sweet. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
Now, DeRico, you and I have actually known each other, especially within the community, for a very long time. But a lot of the people who are watching today don't know you, especially because we have a lot of people with our virtual show coming from across Canada. Would you mind, instead of me messing it up, giving us a little bit of a background of not only who you are, because that in itself is impressive, but really where you are today so we can start talking about that a little bit?
Sure. So right now I'm with provincial government, and I'm with Provincial Government of Nova Scotia, and so I'm the Senior Policy Analyst for the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism Initiatives. And a quick sort of, I guess, maybe backstory, history in terms of who I am. So 8th generation African Nova Scotian. My father's from North Crescent, my mother's from Mulgrave Park. My grandmother is from Phil, and my grandfather is from Hammonds Plains. And so ties to a lot of the different historical Black communities. And previous to my role with provincial government, I was with NASCAD, of course, as you would know, as the Director of Opportunity and Belonging, the first. And then prior to that, I was with the municipal government as the manager of the Youth Advocate Program, which is a community crime prevention program. I was there for 5 years. And then previous to that, I was with Phoenix Youth Programs as a community worker in community of Mulgrave Park. And a lot of my whole career has been working with people, has been working with communities, and centered around caring and mainly social justice. And on top of my current employment, I'm a co-founder of 3 nonprofits in HRM. One being ACE, so Arts, Community, Culture, and Economics. And that's a collection of 13 persons of African descent from a lot of the different communities in HRM, and made up of politicians and entrepreneurs and folks from different sectors. And then as well, Community Land Trust 902, or CLT 902. And that is working to sort of work with the land loss that has been happened to our Black and Indigenous communities, and then as well working to counteract the affordable housing issues that we have through land trust model, and then as well a part of Game Changers 902, or GC 902, with Kate McDonald and Trayvon Clayton, and that's more of a outward advocacy group, sometimes internal behind closed doors with government, police, etc., but advocating for issues and social justice issues. And I'm the IDEA advisor for Tribe BIPOC Network. So IDEA standing for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Action advisor. And BIPOC is a new, Canada's sort of new social kind of platform that is building to connect racialized and marginalized folks across Canada.
Oh my God, and you have time for a beach too. I'm impressed. You're obviously a good delegator, DeRico. No, but really, seriously, I needed you to do that because if, Margaret Mead said it only usually takes, not only takes, but it's essential that a small group of people seem to do everything. And one of the things I always notice about you, DeRico, is you're everywhere. And that bio really speaks to that. You've begun things, you've kept a hand in them, but you've also engaged the community well before, let's say that, even the Black Lives Matter started to really emerge and people started to listen on a different level. And I wondered if you could help me understand better a little bit about the pre versus the post for you experience around Black Lives Matter and what it's done in our community to hopefully open doors and allow you to do the work you do at an even greater scale.
Yeah. So Black Lives Matter overall. So I might have a different take, or maybe this is a new perspective for some people. But when I think about Black Lives Matter, for me, it was never for Black people. Black folks always knew that Black lives mattered. Right. But it was an affirmation and a validation, of course, of my life mattering. But it was also a bit of a nuanced way for folks who are not Black to join in on what we have been talking about for our entire lives. And so pre the Black Lives Matter social movement, we have been Black community has been talking about these issues, and we have been moving things along, but at a bit of a slower pace because of, I think, the reality that we have been speaking about has never been that in your face, maybe since Rodney King, and the fact that a lot of elements really took place here. Everybody was home. It was COVID-19. You weren't allowed to go anywhere, and it was on every single social media platform. And when I say it, I'm talking about the murder of George Floyd on every platform. And so, talking about these things, folks were like, sort of, yeah, we hear you, maybe, but then when it becomes so much in your face and at your doorstep, post murder of George Floyd, eyes are opening, ears are opening, and folks became much more empathetic to what folks were listening or talking about. And then all of the backstory and the stuff became now validated by those folks who were not Black. And so it made the work is now easier, but still not easy, but easier, because there's a recent reference point and many following and before George Floyd that are now validated by others who are not in the Black community to say, okay, we now have an understanding of what it is you're talking about. So the work is easier, but still not easy in relation to the sort of BLM movement and work.
DeRico, I'm a big disability advocate. You know that about it. And I live with disability, and I'm very open about it. So I certainly, from my perspective, understand that piece for me, that being left out, that not being hired, not being considered, and not being promoted. I really wanted to talk to you about the intersection of disability and the BIPOC community, because it's not something that has time to get a lot of air. And this being National Accessibility Week, that's really why I wanted to talk to you, because I totally I'm sensitive to the fact that I never want to take away oxygen from such a big, issue. But at the same time, as a person with disability who believes everyone, no matter what color you are, is going to probably experience disability, either has or will have a disability. So I really wanted to ask you a little bit about that intersection, because both in your professional life, as well as in all the ways you worked in the community, from Phoenix Housing to, CLT 902, Game Changers 9, youth advocate programs. And I know that there's a lot of disability coexisting with all the other barriers. And I wondered if you could help me, who is a disability ally, understand how to better support people at that intersection that really are experiencing multiple barriers already. And it's just so much more to say, let's talk about disability too. You know what I mean, DeRico? And I wondered if you could help me navigate better.
Sure. So I would think about it like this. And one thing I forgot to mention is that I'm also a master's level counselor. So I want to take it from this standpoint, because as you would know better than I would, but there's disabilities that folks can see, and there's disabilities that folks cannot see. And so I'll talk about a bit of the disabilities that folks may not be able to see, and in relation with the intersection, because what I've experienced, especially with some young folks, for those invisible disabilities that may or may not be acknowledged, is that sometimes folks are too busy being Black to actually have a chance to acknowledge the disability that they're having, and maybe be that mental health. And so the intersection where those cross becomes very difficult to navigate, because I'm walking through this world. I'll use myself as an example. I don't have a disability, but I'll just use myself so I'm not referencing anyone. So if I'm too busy walking through the world being a Black man and meeting all of the disproportionalities, the unfair treatment, not being hired, I may not have time to actually think about, dive deep in, or discuss my mental health or the disability that folks do not get to see. And what a clash that can be at that intersection point, where you now start to have conversations, unpack, or even get a diagnosis for a disability that you may have had your entire life because you were too busy being Black. And I say that in the most respectful way that I can, but sometimes people don't understand that intersectionality. And so then now when we talk about the disabilities or the challenges that someone may have that you are able to see, that is also a very difficult to navigate for folks because, again, you have that overarching of all of the things that are now more glaring for folks of color, and then to have a physical challenge just adds on. And so if we think about COVID-19, I say was sort of an equalizer because it affected everybody. But any sort of challenge that someone was facing as a BIPOC individual became heightened. And then on top of that, there's another layer. Any challenge that a person was facing who was a part of the disability community became heightened. And so then we have layers. We have COVID-19, we have a racialized person, then we have someone with a disability, and stack that on top. And then think about how difficult that would be. And so then we could even pull those all apart and say, well, someone who doesn't, a white person who is just dealing with COVID-19, and I don't want to say just because COVID-19 is difficult, but a white person who is dealing with COVID-19 is difficult on its own. And we know that. We could pull it apart and say, we know it's very difficult as a racialized person on its own without COVID-19. We know it's very difficult as a member of the disability community on its own with nothing. And now stack that on top, COVID-19, racialized person, and you have a disability, whether it's visible or invisible, extremely difficult time.
Agreed. And that's why I think it's so important that we're curious as disability agencies and asking people like yourself who really understand the community and can help us be better allies. My question is, what do we as agencies need to do? Because, there is a disability focus, and there's a lot of agencies that are focused, obviously, on different communities, people of African descent, new immigrants, newcomers like ISANs. My real question to you, DeRico, is what do we need to learn as disability agencies to do better and those layers of a complexity, let alone our one layer, then we're not going to do our jobs. We need to do our jobs better. And I just wanted you to help me maybe begin that direction and share with other agencies who maybe aren't thinking about the layers that are being dealt with by different people from different communities, and how we have to acknowledge it first and ultimately acknowledge also that we're not sure how to be better and better engage and be an ally to people who have these multiple layers going on.
So I think that, agencies that focus specifically on disability, that's the thing. And I would say, and I think everyone would say that Reachability would be one of the premier organizations in Halifax or Nova Scotia. And so if that's what the agency does, great. But then there's you also need to then now understand the Black experience, the Indigenous experience, and so on. And so it becomes very nuanced and challenging, but it should be. And so a couple of things are that, cultural competency is lifelong. I will never ever understand what it's like to be an Indigenous person, but I continue to take that journey to understand. And so as an agency that focuses on disability, is they have the expertise in order how to navigate that particular space, but where they may not have the expertise is what is it like to be a racialized person. And so I think that the organizations or agencies or people within have to go on that lifelong journey. And so I'll explain it like this: is that as a Black person, I am Black for the rest of my life. I cannot change that, nor would I want to. However, organizations that wish to be allies, accomplices, co-conspirators, however we want to say it, I don't have the opportunity to be uncomfortable and then retract. Allies do. And so as an organization, there has to be a commitment alongside those folks that you're dealing with to also take that same lifelong journey, because I can't change the color of my skin, nor would I want to. However, organizations or allyship, you have that privilege of jumping in, learning a bit about it, getting uncomfortable and removing yourself. But to be a true ally, to begin that journey alongside members of the disability community who may be racialized, you're already an expert in what you do in terms of serving the disability community, but then you also have to take that next step to get to know the community better, and it has to be lifelong. It can't be a couple one-off trainings, and
Right.
so there's nuance to it. But I would like, I guess, looking from a macro level is that you have to begin to understand what the BIPOC or Black or racialized experience is, and continue that journey alongside those folks for the rest of their lives.
I also believe, and you know, I really appreciate that, because I think we all need to hear it. And I think people are often afraid to be curious about these issues because they're so hot button, you know, like, God forbid you should ask that. But I think if we aren't curious, we're nowhere. You know, I'm a big stay curious, and I don't know what the hell is wrong with you, DeRico Curious. I mean, like, what's going on and how do I do better? And I want to go further with this, because one of the challenges I face isn't just around BIPOC, but also around just males in my field. I mean, it's so ironic, but the NGO field, certainly in Canada, is very female, white, you know, kind of, it's where it's landed. And I really have belief that we have to diversify from within. And again, it's more than just the one-time discussion or one interview or one anti-oppression training session, although all of those things together can be supportive, right? Or are we going down the wrong road? Maybe I need you to go a little micro now that you've done the macro for me. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just writing down a couple of things.
Yeah, good. I'll keep talking. Have I mentioned how nice it looks in your yard? Go ahead.
Because now I'm like, okay, this is where Tova wants me to go. So, so some kind of micro things I think that organizations do. Certainly the trainings, absolutely. I think those are, but they have to be ongoing. I really think that. So this is one thing I'm really big on, is that we will create best practices for issues that we know exist rather than actually facing the issue. And so I'm really a believer of liberation. And so rather than creating, and I think that people, maybe yourself included, the photo where it's like equality and equity, it's the people standing on the crates. There's another step to that, where liberation. Why aren't we talking about getting rid of the fence? We're just talking about stacking crates. And so rather than creating best practices in the organization for issues we know exist, such as racism, such as ableism, such as any ism, let's talk about actually getting rid of the problem. And so that might mean you may need to make an example out of somebody. You may need to let people go. And you know, I think about the other part of this is that you also need to make room. There's the shift coming. People are just taking the space rather than waiting for people to make room. But if you're going to be an ally, accomplice, co-conspirator, there's a power shift that will happen. And you have to be willing to give up power in order to lift up some of those voices who may have been voiceless or marginalized for a long period of time. And so when I think about NGOs, and we think about how are they doing, how are the folks on the margins of the margins doing within your organization? Look to there to give a true and accurate assessment of how your organization is doing. Then look to your board. Who is on your board? Is your board representative? Does your board understand? And then a few other things, of course, I think are the conversations have to be ongoing. It can't just be February rolls around and we start talking about Black issues. It can't just be we start talking about Indigenous history when that rolls around. Like, they have to be ongoing, and the commitment has to be ongoing. And then a couple other things I would say are that the leadership has to be invested. The leadership 100% needs to be invested in this. They have to be not afraid to take risks, not afraid to make mistakes, but show that we're leading in the direction where the organization should be going. And if you're not on board with that, then you may be in the wrong organization, because this is what is important for us and for the communities that we serve. Certainly representation and being reflective of the community, of the city, of the country that we live in is very important for individuals to come in and see themselves. And also, I think it's very important to say, if you don't know, I don't know, but I'm going to try. I'm going to look. I'm going to find in order to, because sometimes some organizations they're scared to take that risk and say that I don't know.
Well, DeRico, you just said something that was really the segue to my next question, which is, we do have this cancel culture a little bit, and I'm noticing so many people are afraid to even take steps, because if I take the wrong step, which has always been my accusation around disability, they're so busy wanting to not do the wrong thing, they avoid. So I'm concerned, because I'm seeing people avoiding asking difficult questions and being a little uncomfortable in doing it, because they're so afraid it's going to turn into some kind of big cancel culture moment. And I wondered what your thoughts were for people who want to be curious, but maybe are a little nervous to tread in the wrong places and upset some kind of cart that isn't necessarily the really big picture, at least in my mind.
Yeah. So, I think that there's, so one, there's a difference between free speech and hate speech, big difference. And I think that there's also a difference between genuinely curious and then just plain ignorance. And so if your fear of being canceled or being wrong is the reason for you not doing or asking the right questions, in protection or defense of the marginalized communities, then you might be in the wrong place.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Because I would much rather, any day, I would much rather any person who is not Black ask me questions. And certainly I have the opportunity to answer if I don't need to answer, but I would much rather someone ask me questions genuinely curious, wanting to help, than to not do anything. And because that is often used as the crutch to not act. Well, I want to ask, but I'm very scared that, and at that point you're making it about yourself. It's not about you. It's actually about the bigger picture, the bigger organization, the community that you're serving. And so if you're the person in the leadership role, if you're the person who's at the helm that has the ability to turn the lever and make decisions, and you're scared of taking a risk, or you're scared of being canceled, you've made it about you at that point. And if you're scared, ask some of your trusted colleagues, some of your friends, some of your family or people from the particular communities that you're looking to engage with. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. Here's the questions I want to ask. What do you think about these? But it's not about you at the end of the day. And so
right. You're the vessel is what I tell everyone. We're exactly. A vessel, and it goes through us. And if we take it too personally, we've missed the whole point, because it's really not about us.
Exactly. We're never, ever going to always get it 100% correct. But imagine all of the things we would not have if we just said, geez, I'm scared to take that risk, so I'm not going to do it.
And how many people with disability wouldn't be employed if everyone said that as well? I mean, we can relate
exactly.
it to any group, any day. It's the marginalized communities that are getting left out because they're afraid of stepping wrong. And I always say Nova Scotians are very polite, but in the wrong way. We're so busy not wanting to offend anybody, we offend everybody. So, you know what I mean? We avoid everyone. And I think that that's not the way to go. And DeRico, I want to get back to today and what you're up to, because I haven't had a chance to really hear how you're going to be influencing things and making a difference, as you always do, in this new role as the senior policy analyst. I mean, it sounds pretty fancy.
Well, I mean, so I'll say a bit about it. So with this office, the office was set up by current Premier Rankin, and it's, to my knowledge, one of the first. Maybe there's only another sort of similar office, I think, somewhere in Ontario. And so, Office of equity and anti-racism initiatives, very bold, speaks to the goals and the things that we want to get accomplished. And so my role is a lot to do with looking at policy, creating policy, analyzing what already exists. And then as well, there's a lot of pieces around engagement and community engagement and a lot of specific things I can't say yet, but there's a lot of really hot button issues that the community has been discussing for a long time that we are getting to work on. I'm just not sure if I'm allowed to talk about it or not.
Yeah, and I don't want to get you in any trouble. Is it, and you just say when you can't answer something, but is it related to, and I won't get too deep or anything, but are you working alongside, obviously, the accessibility directorate? And because, I mean, there's been so much coming out of there that I'm really curious how much that affects or if that's how it intersects with your role.
Absolutely. So those things, of course. So the office itself, because of how it is and where it sits, it has the ability to reach across and discuss with all of the other different departments in the province. And equity and anti-racism are broad terms, and that can be applicable to every other department. And so this is my third weekend, so I am learning all of the ins and outs.
I chase you everywhere you go. I chase you. I swear. It must be like you think I'm kind of like, I do. I follow you. I'm following your career as a fan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. It's been a journey. And so, with this office, I look at it sort of, I got this from, you might know Bradley Day, but I've heard this from Bradley Day. So doing a head heart check-in. And so, where's your head at and where's your heart? And, if you're in a place of employment and your head is there, but your heart is somewhere else, how can you get those two aligned? And so, my heart has always been and will always be with people, with community, and solving issues, especially social justice issues. And I know a lot firsthand growing up in public housing, and I know a lot about my experiences. And so if I can get to a place and space where my head and my heart are aligned at my place of work, it's not work because it's things I would be doing anyway during my off time. And so it's a blessing really for me to be in this particular position.
I feel very honored as well, just in terms of the ability to make a difference in my community and in multiple communities, because I do believe disability is cross-community in that regard. I love what you said about solving issues. I have this saying, pitch, don't bitch, and you are the ultimate. You should have the t-shirt because, if you see that problem, I know you to be someone who's willing to say, how do we solve it? And you yourself just said, it's all about solving and looking for solutions, not just saying we got a problem. And I think you're the ultimate example of the pitch, don't bitch mentality, where you're saying, look, there is an issue. We got it. But what are we going to do about it? Let's talk action, not just regurgitate all the troubles we have.
I like that shirt idea. I like that shirt idea.
I definitely, no. I was going to send you a bath t-shirt for today, but I think I'm going to have to send you a pitch, don't bitch. But this is coming too, just because as well as I do. The Blue Nose Ability Arts and Film Festival is happening during National Accessibility Week. And we think it's so important to engage artists because it really is a playing field equalizer. So right. I'm excited to share with you some of that as well. DeRico, what didn't I ask you I should have? My favorite question.
So, one thing I wanted to mention is that so alongside with the sort of the pitch, don't bitch, I sort of have this thing about, do you want to be right or do you want to win? And so we could go into any room and scream at the top of our lungs about all of the things that are happening, and we're probably right. But what's the way that we're able to win? And often that goes with strategy, that goes with particular positions, that goes with some politicking, but there has to be strategy behind it. And so I can yell all I want to, I can put whatever I want, all I want on my social media, and probably be right, but what is the best way that I can position my community, our communities, to be able to win, to actually advance the issues.
As I say, win, win, win.
Exactly, yes.
DeRico, what a better way. Oh God, you're a segue king. What a better way to talk about it than admit that I believe there are 3 wins in everything we do. And if we allow for 3 wins, we're engaging more than just ourselves and our immediate needs. That 3 win, meaning everybody wins, I just feel like it's a way to move forward. And I'm really grateful that you're out there helping me do it and do it well and allowing me to be curious so I can do better in this community and all the communities that I intend to serve. So I'm just so excited in the role you are. And once you're allowed to tell us more, I'm having you back on and we'll talk more. But at the moment, DeRico, I just want to say thank you. You've really elevated the entire community with your work. And I just wanted to honor that as well. So thank you from all of us.
I really, really appreciate that. I appreciate you, your work, the organization, all of the stuff that you've been doing, your book, and you've been a leading voice in these conversations. So very thankful, humbled, and honored to be a part of Tova Talks and bringing these conversations.
So narcissistic. I know you're thinking that is the most narcissistic title.
I love it. I love it.
It's okay. My therapist said I had empathy. I'm okay. So with that, I will release you. DeRico, thank you so much for being on a Tova Talks, and I look forward to hearing more about what you're doing in the community because I absolutely think you're one of the great ones in our community. So thank you. All the best. Take care.